Well, Art, what a way to start, huh?
Yeah.
Here's a cheer if you need it.
I'm quitting now.
Yeah, start while you're ahead, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's all yours.
I got a fancy shirt. I got the great boys from the first big red one. Nothing else I can do today. It's all over. In any event, my purpose here today is to talk to you guys for a little bit, and I think I've been blessed with giving extra time so we can talk about two subjects. We'll talk about my war experiences, and then we'll talk about the experiences we had at the Nuremberg War Crimes Trials, as that seems to be something that people want to hear about now. Before I say anything more about it, I want you to know that it's not about Art Staymates. It's a few of us guys, and there aren't many of us left, but a few of us had gotten together about 10 years ago because we didn't talk about our war. For the first 50 or 60 years, nobody talked about it. If you had flashbacks and problems, you called one of your old Army buddies because nobody else could understand what went on in the infantry. We've kind of made a pact that as long as we could do this, we were going to go tell our story, hoping that the young men and women closer, is that better? Hoping that the young men and women that hear this story would know more of what happened to their fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles, and so forth if they were riflemen in an infantry company. It's probably the worst job you could have. But in any event, it's not about me. I wasn't a hero. The only heroes are the ones who didn't come home. This story is in honor of them. I'd like to maybe start by saying that my first combat experience was at Omaha Beach. We came over from the States as replacements for boys that were lost to the 1st Infantry Division through the Sicilian African campaign. They lost a lot of people. We came over as fill-ins, met them in England, trained with them for almost a month or a month and a half. We had already had our basic infantry training, but then we did combat training with them. Then we went in combat at Omaha Beach, and this was the worst place to be at that time. As a matter of fact, right now with the 7:45 in the afternoon on the beach right now, if we were still there, we would have hit the beach at 6:30 yesterday morning, our time. We were up on top of the hill in the French hedgerows. By that evening, we were nothing but target practice for the first 12 hours. The German had target practice. We took the bullets. Now we were at this time the next day, which would be right now, 71 years from right now, we were up in the hedgerows, and we were more than holding our own because we did have the greatest small arms weapons in the country. They had the greatest artillery, we had the best small arms. This gave us the advantage once we got up on top. Before that, the 1st Division lost 2,000 men on D-Day on the beach. I asked many times since then how many were severe wounds in addition to the 2,000 deaths, and the answer was unimaginable amounts. We never got an answer to that, so I have no idea how far the bad stuff went, but the D-Day was a terrible day. However, you're here to hear about what we did and what the guys who didn't come home did, because many of them never made the beach. We were on a thing called LCIs, Landing Craft Infantry. It was a Higgins boat made to hold 31 people. But on D-Day with the extra ammunition and all the extra stuff, we had 21 to 22 people on each boat. And it's not nice to tell you that if there was 21 or 22 on there, we were all seasick. We were all scared to death. Nobody knew what was going to happen next. We tried to be brave 18 and 19-year-old kids and pretend that we weren't scared. It was all just nervous laughter if anything took place. And if you can imagine 21 guys being crowded in like this in waves about 6 feet high and a little Higgins boat giving it this. Once one guy got sick, everybody was sick. There was no choice in that. In addition, I think I learned more that day about what fear was. We were all fearful because no young man wanted to get killed, and we had been told that the losses would be tremendous. So we, in our own minds, I guess each of us knew that we were probably going to get killed, but you can't swim back to England, so you might as well get into the battle because you're stuck with it right there on the beach. Anyhow, a lot of us didn't make the beach. When our craft came in, the LCI had a front gate as wide as the thing was, and when it got into where about 3 feet of water was supposed to be, they dropped the gate, and we were supposed to run out through the gate onto the beach. Things that's supposed to be don't always happen. The machine guns were already strafing the boat, waiting for the gate to drop, so I said to my people, it's too important for me to tell you what to do. This is a matter of life or death. I'm going over the right side of the boat because the machine gun fire is coming from this angle. My best bet would be to have the boat between me and them when I hit the water. Apparently they all must have thought I knew something because they jumped in with me, went over. We met disaster right there because apparently some plane unfortunately had drop bombs there, whether it was on the way back or whether it was by accident or something, and we were into a bomb crater. So instead of landing in 3 feet of water, we were in, I said it felt like 12 or 14 feet. It was a tremendous exaggeration. It was probably about 8 feet, but the pack you had on your back that weighed 65 pounds in normal training was 80 pounds for going into combat at Omaha Beach. And now when it was wet, you probably have 100 pounds on your back, and you can't get up to get any breath. You're fighting real hard just to get up to get a breath of air, and you take another couple steps. But it was wonderful to know that after from here to this young man, it started to go like this, and if you could make it through that far, then you were going to get up into this much water and then this much. Of course, then you started thinking maybe I should get back down in a little lower because the strafing was going on, but we did that. Unfortunately, we also had to help carry guys out of there who, whether it was through fear or what, they just were immovable. They couldn't act, they couldn't react. They were scared to death, I guess would be the right word, but so was all of us. Just some of us could still maybe move around, but so many boys drowned right there, never got to the sand. It was terrible. But we dragged them off and got them into the sand as far as we could, and medics, bless their hearts, and if any of you are here that were or intend to be medics, it's a proud occupation, I'll tell you, because they just couldn't make the rounds fast enough. They couldn't be with everybody at once, and terrible things were happening all around us. If you saw the movies, they had things in the water there that were supposed to give us some protection that you could hide beside while you were sneaking in when you got into 3 foot of water or so, but they also had some of them mined. So if a machine gun shell happened to hit one of them, it would explode. One of my good friends was hiding behind one of them. The machine gun hit that thing. There was nothing left of my friend or that pole or anything else. Another one of my good buddies running right beside me when we were trying to get up after we got a foothold up on the beach. And when the machine guns would come across, you'd try to time it. Once he'd go by, then you'd go as hard as you could go, as far as you could go, and then hit the dirt so when it came back, it would hopefully go over your head again. The Air Force had intended to bomb the beach the night before and the day before that. The Air Force couldn't fly because of the weather, so there was no craters, no place to dive into. You just hit the sand and hope that it missed you that time, so that you would have another chance when it came back this way. And after you got a time back and forth, you'd know when to take your few steps. Well, that beach looked from the edge of the water at low tide when we went in, it looked like that beach was 3 miles wide before you get up to the cliff, and it was really only probably close to 300 yards maybe, but that was a long, long trip to make when you were target practice for the German machine gunners. But some of us did make it, and rather than tell you all the terrible things that happened along that way, I'll say that when we did get up to the cliff, it wasn't a safe place to be because now the Germans were dropping down their hand grenades. We called them potato mashers. They were dropping them down on us and blowing us up right there. Their mortar fire was coming in and blowing us up. There was no place to be safe on D-Day. You just had to stay as lucky or whatever it is that you could to get through the whole thing. In any event, some of us did, and then some of us got up to the cliff, and then getting over the cliff, if you remember seeing the movies, it was impossible. We would shoot things up, we would grab the ground up there, and then try to go up the ladders. The Germans would take them loose and drop us down. Later in the day, you get them up there again, and our guys put things around them to make it look like they were booby traps so that if they touched them, they'd blow up. The Germans figured it out pretty soon, pulled them loose again, and we'd fall back down. It was a pretty tough day's work. A lot of terrible stuff went on at that time. And rather than drag this part of the thing out too long, because there's a lot more war to be fought before we get into another subject, I'll say that finally by that evening, after about 12 hours on the beach and trying to get to where you wanted to be and trying to get guys, and the 1st Division, by the way, is a remarkable, wonderful division with a great history. But believe me, we weren't alone on D-Day. Had we been alone, none of us would have been here. Quite a few of us aren't anyhow, and that's what this meeting is about. And anyhow, on the right of us was the 29th Infantry Division, which is a great division, 101st Airborne. We don't know this, we couldn't see them, but they were supposed to come in up on top so they could take away some of the battle from the machine gun nests up there to relieve us a little bit. And then there was big ships at sea, and I think it was an English ship that had the big cannons on it. They were supposed to bomb up there near the machine gun nest to at least take their attention away from keeping us down so we could get up. But they were afraid to start sending their big shells in, because until they got the proper coordinates, if they came up a little bit short, they would be dropping their shells on us instead of on the Germans. So that wasn't working at all for a while. So for a while it was just all stay lucky, keep moving in the right direction, and we had some great people that tried to keep us motivated to move forward, and we did, and we made the ground up to the bottom of the cliff. I'd like to stop now and say something that keeps bothering me that I have left out of these meetings in case some of you here for the second one, and that is, while all of this is so bad, I'd like to say something that every mother in here is going to hate me for, and most of the young men in here are not going to like it, but I truly believe, on behalf of this country, and for those young men's better future, we should have a draft again. We should have youngsters out of high school or in college go into the Army for 2 years. They would learn how to take care of themselves under terrible circumstances. It wouldn't hurt them. They would meet other guys from all different walks of life. You walk into a barracks the first time, if you're a little old country kid like me, you walk into a barracks and there's 9 or 10 guys going to sleep in there, and I never been away from home. I never been on a train. I never been on a bus except to go to play football and basketball and stuff. But I never was on an airplane. And all at once you're mingling with guys from all over the world, or all over the country. And I'm sorry to get off track just for a minute about that, but I wanted to remember to say it because I realize I haven't said it in the last couple meetings I've had here. And I hope you mothers aren't all mad at me, and I hope you young kids don't beat me up before the day's over, but I think it would be the best thing for you, and I would hope it worked well. I don't think it will happen soon, but someday it almost has to happen to keep this country the way this country should be kept. In any event, back to the hedgerows. We're up on top now. We get up the cliff and we think we're ready to go into battle for the first time that day, which is certainly no fun. We're still even more scared than we were when we started, I guess, because now you're hearing all this stuff happen. You're seeing what's happened to your buddies. And if you're still alive, you're so scared you can hardly act. But you had to do something, and at least we're into it where we do have an opportunity to act and try to take care of ourselves. But when we got to the top and we looked out this way, there's a place probably just almost from here to the back of the tent that we had to cross, and it had barbed wire this high, just in rolls of it. There was no way in the world to get through it easily, but fortunately the thing called bandoliers, I believe they call them, were pipes that were filled with powder. The people in charge of us were wise enough to have some of those available, and we were able to get guys to get them on up to us, and we could stick them under the barbed wire, blow it up, and we could get through the barbed wire. So now we're 18 or 19 years old and thought we were very bright because we did this, and now we knew everything there was to do. Got through the barbed wire, got up to over the next hill, and there was a nice flat place, probably not quite as long as the width of this tent. And we had to cross it, but it looked flat. Here's a piece of cake, so now we're going to be okay. And we found out that that was mines. And mines are the terrible. They're just terrible weapons because we call them bouncing betties. If you step on a mine, it comes up like this and just cuts you in half. And I had one of the guys right beside me when they were strafing us down on the beach, and we both dove to get our face in the sand as low as we could. He landed on a mine, It's not even nice to say it. There was nothing left. There was no dog tags. There was no arms. There was no legs. Nothing. And that's some of the worst thing that you could possibly say at a time like this. And I shouldn't be saying it at lunchtime, but I want you to know some of the things that were really, really bad, and then I'll try to stay away from the rest of the really bad stuff. Anyhow, get up in the French, in the hedgerows, and hedgerows, I'm not sure if you know what they are, but you've probably seen them in the movies. If you were a kid in the country like I was, it was plowed fields, and the plow makes the furrow, and there's a little hump here, and it goes like this. Well, the hedgerows were the same thing, but they were about 6 or 7 feet this way, with trees on the top, and you were in one lane there thinking, well, this is pretty safe, we'll work our way that way, and step over in that one, and boom, there they were. You're from here to there, head to head with your enemy for the first time, and you can look them dead in the eye, and good and bad things happen. But this was the hedgerows. We got through them, and again, there's no use talking about all the terrible things that happened there and the terrible losses we had. We got through the hedgerows. We get now down into France, and now it's city battles. You're going to take towns, and the French are wonderful people overall, and still are, but they weren't trustworthy then because the Germans had been there so long that a lot of them were really friends of the Germans, and you didn't know for sure who you could trust, so you had to watch what was happening in France. But we got through these city battles sometime, including French people that were helping them. Of course, we had French underground that was helping us that we didn't know about at times. But the French battles were tough. It was house by house, town by town, and some of those towns were pretty big, as you know. And when you were in a battle for a city, I'm taking my group of people and I'm going down this side of the street, and I don't know what's going on right here beside me in these buildings. You, my other leader, you're over here going down that side of the street. You don't know what's there, so it's my responsibility to let you know what's going on over there. Yours to let me know what's going on over here. So if I see something in the window over there that's moving, I tap my rifle like this. You know to pay attention to what's going on right there. Well, paying attention to what's going on right there is the next terrible thing you have to decide. Am I going to throw a grenade in that window and try to save my own life? This may hurt women and may hurt children, and it's not something we're there to do. Fortunately, the French knew ahead of time when we were coming because they knew what was happening on their radios, they knew what was happening in the news, and they were out of town. And I can honestly say to you that of all the times I had guys on that side of the street throw grenades in, and we on this side were throwing them in because there was movement there. Then you go in to clean the house out, and thank God I can say that I never saw a child or a woman that was hurt by our attack. Maybe that was just luck on our part, or maybe our advanced systems of communication got to them enough to know that they should be out of there or down in the basements or someplace safe. So we got through that, but it was a scary thing to do because you never knew what was going to happen where you couldn't see where the grenade was going to land. But you took towns like that, and you got so used to it you could take them pretty fast if they weren't too big. Get through France, we get into Belgium. Belgium was a totally different game. The Belgian people were totally trustworthy. They loved us. They brought us things out. I tell the story lightly that a beautiful older lady came out with a thing that looked like an ice cream cone of paper, and I just stuck these things in the top. Well, I was a kid born and raised in a country, and my mother made mashed potatoes, fried potatoes, creamed potatoes, but I never had French fries. Well, went like this. I didn't know if I should eat it or not, but we did trust them, so I thought it was the best French fry in the whole world, best French fry I ever tasted. I thought, my God, this is wonderful. This is what it's all about. And so, of course, by the time I reached for the second handful, all my guys were in it, and there was no potatoes left. But it happened more than once in Belgium, and I thought it was wonderful. And I'm telling this story now because I just come back from Belgium. I was over in December of last year for the 70th anniversary of the Belgian Bulge. And on the way over, I said to the guys in the plane, when I get to Belgium, I have the French fries, the greatest French fries in the whole world. So we got over there, and at first dinner we had, I ordered French fries, and believe me, they were okay, but they weren't as good as ours. And then I remembered now that I probably hadn't eaten in at least 3 days when I had that first French fry. And when you're hungry enough, everything feels and tastes real good. So, but anyhow, I learned that they liked us, and if they were good enough to give us their potatoes, they were good enough to fight for them. And they treated us great. We went through Belgium. We thought we were heroes. We went through Luxembourg, which they treated us great. We got into Germany. One of the guys somewhere along the line, when you take a town, we're not thieves, but you take whatever's in there that you think would help you or whatever you want. So one of the guys came out with what kind of radio is that? A shortwave radio. And so the guys turned it on and had batteries in it, and we were listening to it. Hermann Goring, who I came to know later and who I'll talk to you about later. Hermann Goring was making a speech, and it was right on our line of the 1st Division going towards Aachen. We had to cross the Siegfried line to get into Aachen. And Goring's making this speech to the German people and telling them, you've got nothing to worry about. They will not cross the Siegfried line. There's no way. But if somehow they cross the Siegfried line, they'll never take Aachen. And if they take Aachen, I'll change my name to Schnickelgruber. I don't know why it stuck in my mind, but I'm so glad I did, because I collected usually with Mr. Goring on many occasions later in life. So anyhow, we did get through Luxembourg, we did get into Germany, we did cross the Siegfried line, and we did take Aachen, which was a god-awful fight, because it was the first big major city in Germany, and they said we'd never have it. Again, to make it light, when it was finally to where we had taken it, and the commanding general of Aachen was there, and he was ready to surrender. We went in to accept the surrender, and he said he wouldn't surrender to any of us. He would only surrender to General Eisenhower. Well, Eichen, back in England, doing wonderful work keeping this whole thing organized, and we explained to him very carefully that it's okay with us, you can surrender to us, or we could kill you here and you're under command surrender to us. So you have two choices, and he politely surrendered it. So we took Aachen, and that was over, and then we were going to go further, and I told my guys, one of my really smart decisions, I told my guys, the war's over. They said we'd never cross the Siegfried. They said we'd never take Aachen. We did both of those things now. We're going to be home by Christmas. And this was like this was still in November, early November. So I said, this is a piece of cake. Well, one of my other great statements that was proven bad to be wrong. And we noticed no sooner got done with all that than I learned this later, because we didn't know it, neither did our generals know it. But Hitler, in his fanatic attitude of the way things were going, decided to pull 3 divisions, which would be 60,000 people, off the Russian front, their eastern front, and bring them to stop us, because he thought if he could stop us there, drive us back through Luxembourg, back through Belgium, back into France, and back into the Channel, then they won the war. But of course he was weakening their front on the Russian front, and the Russians they hated the Germans. We killed them because we were trying to win a war. They killed them because they wanted to kill them. And it was about that much difference. But anyhow, he did bring them off. Hermann Goring told me later that he didn't have 60,000 troops, but they were afraid to tell him he didn't have them, so they brought what they had, and it was probably about 40,000 troops. But they didn't know that these people were coming, nor did we. And it's a thing now that we call the Belgian Bulge. They just took all the ground that I just told you we took and fought hard to get. Drove us back out of there, because we're now down. A platoon that should have 42 men and was lucky to have 18 or 20. A company supposed to have 145 men and was lucky to have 80 or 90. So, and we couldn't get replacements up fast enough, so they kept driving us back, and they took us back through Belgium, they took us back through Luxembourg, they took us back through parts of France, and they were going to drive us into the Channel. But by now our replacements were coming, and thank goodness for our supply line. Somehow they were bringing the guys up fast enough, and we got resupplied and started back again, and we took all that country back that we took the first time. We took it again, and we're now into Germany for would be to finish the war, however long that was going to last. I'm supposed to top it one, right? Okay, so this is, and we did this, and they really, really loved us, because one little old gentleman was probably in his 80s when I was over there for the Battle of Bulge reunion, said that, I said, how can you possibly get it from generation to generation down to where y'all love us so much. I mean, mothers made their little children 6, 7 years old, little American uniforms, gave them flags to wave to us, come out and would hug us and want to take pictures with us. The next generation, the young men would come over and just walk with us wherever we were going to go, march with us, treat us like their brothers. They just treat us great. And I said to this guy, I said, you were old enough to know what was going on here. How come these people, through generation down to generation, still love us and treat us this much? How do they know this much about it? And he said, real seriously, and he spoke good English, he said, did you ever lose your freedom? And we never talk about losing our freedom. So I said, no. And he said, well, we were under the Nazi regime for many, many years before you, or a long time, many years in some cases, before you got here, and they raped our ladies, they killed our men, they treated our children terrible, they drafted us into labor things. It was a terrible life to live, and we lost all of our freedom, and you guys came over and gave it back to us. And I thought, man, this is wonderful. But within a couple of months after you gave us back to us, which now we're talking about the Belgian Bulge, they came back and did it again, hung their Nazi banners out again, and here we are. We're under Nazi rule again, right after you take it. But then you guys came back and drove them out this time, and they never come back. Why wouldn't we be here to celebrate your 70th anniversary of the Belgian Bulge, and why wouldn't we have all of our country? I couldn't buy a cup of coffee. You couldn't. They did everything in the world for you. They treated you like kings. It was indeed a wonderful thing to be around, and a wonderful feeling to have as to how they felt towards us. And this is about, there's a whole lot more war stories to tell, but this is kind of the first half hour I was going to spend in the war, and I'm going to do other. But before I leave this, does anybody have questions on this part of it before we go to the next one? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about your toughest combat in the Battle of the Bulge? The Battle of the Bulge, your toughest combat you had to go through there?
The Hurtgen Forest and the Ardennes. And when I was over this time, I want you to know that in the Hurtgen Forest and the Ardennes, we lost 5,300 men out of the 1st Division there. Of course, that lasted 5 or 6 weeks, but it's still tremendous loss. They have retained the foxholes that the Germans were in, foxholes we were in, and they've made them sacred ground. People can go in their woods and do things, but they can't touch those places, and we actually went back through them and saw them when we were there. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that tells you what went on at the time. Yes, ma'am.
On D-Day, when you were on the beach, when was the first time you were able to take some offensive actions, like fire your weapons? When were you able to do that?
If we fired weapons any time between 6:30 in the morning and right around that time is when we were supposed to hit the beach, and it's when we did. If we fired any weapons there, it was just to see if the water had clogged us up or not. We just shot up in the air. We had nothing that would shoot up and go like this. They had us up there with 76 caliber machine guns just sweeping us all the time. So it would have been 7:15, 8 o'clock at night by the time, because it was still just almost dark, by the time we got up on top of it in the hedgerows where we were really able to aim at something that we were trying to do. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, I'll stop talking about the war and talk about something that's not quite so... What? Ooh, yeah. Well, it'll lead to the other thing. Anyhow, the 1st Division, the war ended because there was 150,000 German soldiers in a place called the Central European Pocket. It was right on the outskirts in part of Czechoslovakia. And they came to us and told us that if we could encircle that area, take that 150,000 soldiers prisoner, the war would end. And General Patton was a great Pat. Was a great general, but I have to tell you the story. Any of you know that, or any of you soldiers under him? My brother did, and my mother always at the dinner table. When we all go back from the war on Sundays, we'd go home to mother's for dinner, and she'd say, no discussions about Patton. Because my brother was in the 3rd Army, the 3rd Armored Division with Patton. I was in the 1st Army with General Hodges and didn't like Patton. But the difference is Patton said he would be, at one time he made a statement, I'm sure he didn't mean it the way it sounded, but he said he'd rather lose a company of infantry, 145 men, than one tank. Well, if you're in the infantry, you just can't like him for that. He also slapped the boy and said that he didn't have battle fatigue. I heard he slapped more than one, I don't know that. In the Sicily Africa campaign, said, get out of bed and go back to battle. Well, I can tell you that maybe some guys tried to fake it, but you knew if a guy couldn't handle it or couldn't handle it. If he was in the hospital, he couldn't handle it, so Patton and do right to slap him. So anyhow, when I joined the 1st Division as a replacement, getting ready to go to the beach, they said, we don't like Patton. I said, okay, I don't like Patton, but I didn't know why. But before, and the reason I'm getting off of this, because we're going out of the war part of it, before we started the circle for Czechoslovakia, we're on a little town, and I don't even know the name of it. We're on a hill. We were supposed to take checkpoint 10 up on a hill. And we fought like the devil to get up there and take that checkpoint. We did, and it was just getting dark. And my guys said, man, that, we're lucky to get out of this. We only lost a few people, and we accomplished our objective. Where do we go next? I said, we wait till we hear. Well, in World War II, your phone it looked like a brick, and it only worked 10% of the time would have been a good thing. So you never knew what was going on, but you eventually would get an order to go someplace else, checkpoint so-and-so, and you didn't know where you were going in the infantry. You went where you were told to go, did your job, and you're wondering, why are we wasting people here and there? But when you could see the big picture, as I got home and read some books, you realized the people that were in charge knew what they were doing. They'd bring us all back together at a certain point. It would make a lot of sense. Well, anyhow, we're up on checkpoint 10, and my guy said, that town's not very big down there, Lucky. And I said, yeah. And they said, why don't we go down and take it? Because none of us had been under a roof for a month and a half or two. None of us had food if we could steal out of their house or dig up their potatoes in the lawn or something. Why don't we take it? It's a little like a little farm town. They said we could crawl in there and send out a few guards around and take turns sleep a couple hours and then get up the next. I said, no, we got to stay on checkpoint 10. Well, needless to say, I'd like to sleep under a roof once and just sleep, but I'd like to. In the infantry, you're always cold, you're always wet, you're always hungry, and you can hardly ever find real fresh water that you can trust. But anyhow, after about 3 or 4 of these discussions with the guys, that come on, we can take that town tonight. We'll have a place to lay down, and I wanted to do it anyhow. So I broke the rule and did what I wasn't supposed to do. We went down and took that little town. We were within 30 minutes from the time we hit it. The Germans saw us coming. A few were there, took off. We took the first house and offered those elderly people a place to go stay. We're going to use this house as our headquarters. We set guys up in there, told them to go to sleep. We'll be back awake in an hour or two. We set guards out around so we could be warned if anything was going on. And so we were now just waiting to see what our next orders came through. Well, that night it came my turn to sleep was probably 2 o'clock in the morning or something, or later, and then my turn to get a couple hours sleep before we did something else. And I'm in there probably for an hour, and I must have probably been dead because I'd laid down since I don't know when with the roof over my head, and I'm sound asleep. And all at once I hear tanks. Now the worst thing you want to hear if you got a platoon that's supposed to have 45 men, and it's only got about 18 left, and you just took a little town, you're sleeping a little bit. The one thing you don't need is to tie into a bunch of tanks, because you can't handle that. So I said, oh man, this is terrible. So I hollered for all the guys and ran through the house and said, go get the guards in, and we got everybody there. The few of us that left, 18 of us maybe. We're standing on the sidewalk, and it was getting clearer and clearer that you could see what was coming, and the noise was getting close. And I said, oh, this is a great day. These are our tanks. So now we're all cheery. Yay, get some tanks in here. We have plenty of help, and wherever we have to go next, we'll have someone to go with us. Well, as they got closer, there's a Jeep in front of the first tank, and normally in a Jeep, as you guys know from being actors here, or if you've been in the service, you got a place in the Jeep in the back where you stand up and you got your machine gun mounted, and you're facing that way. Well, this Jeep came in, and I can see him through the mist now in the morning, and he's standing with his back to where the Jeep was going, looking back that way. Well, this don't look right. And the closer they got, the more you could see that he was doing something else, heading back that way. And then all at once you could see the tank, and there on the first tank stood General Patton, where you could see him sticking out through the turret with his silver-plated pistols and his silver-plated helmet. And here what it was going to be, of course, It was a big publicity stunt because you couldn't see what the size of the town would be. A few houses. It'll be in the newspaper. He took this other town, just ran right through with no losses and did good. And as I said, he was a great general, has a great reputation. He was very profane. He had a tremendous ego. He was an egomaniac. We all have egos, but he was high. I loved him for what he did, and I'm sorry he got killed in the Audubon in a wreck there because he wanted to be a fighting and killed in fighting general, and I appreciate that. But he was a tough dog to keep under the porch. So they pull up, and I realized then that this guy that's facing backwards is taking the pictures, and Patton's tank comes up first, and standing there going like this, and we're standing all over the sidewalk there. He gets up and looks around like this and said, "Who's in charge of this outfit?" And I hoped they would all forget. I'm looking around too. They're all going like this. And I said, "I am, sir." And of course, you don't wear badges or medals or captain's bars or lieutenant. You don't wear nothing in combat. You just fight. You don't even know if you got promoted. You just take over something when some of the guys think you can do the job and say, "Where are we going to go next, Lucky?" And that makes you a platoon sergeant or something, or a squad leader or something. That's just the way combat is. So he said, "What's your name and serial number?" and all this stuff, and about 4 of his flunkies jump out and they come over and they're writing all this stuff down, and he called me a lot of different names, and finally said, "You were supposed to stay up on checkpoint 10. And I'm thinking, how does he know that? He's in command of the 3rd Army. We're in the 1st Army. And all at once, I know I was probably at that time 8, 19 and thought I knew everything. But all at once I realized that they had already organized this so that Patton could go in free-handed and make this thing look real good, and nobody would be there to bottom. Here we are, we ruin this whole thing because we're standing out there in the street like idiots, all muddy and dirty and unshaven. So he chewed me out real good, and before he was done chewing me out, he said, "This is the end of your career, young man. I'll see to that." I said, "Yes, sir," and I felt bad for about 3 seconds. And I said, "Whew, they might just send me home." And I thought, well, they might send me to the stockade. So I didn't know whether I wanted to be happy or not, but I wasn't scared. I just, first time I ever talked to a general, and I didn't do much saying except, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." So anyhow, the word got back, and I knew that I would hear soon, and surely about within a week, I got a message from one of our colonels that I had been in combat with before, and he said, "I understand that you and Patton had words." I said, "No, sir, Patton had words," and I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, he's pretty upset with you." I said, "Yes, sir, what's the end result?" He said, "Don't worry about it. Ike's not very fond of him." Who was the English general? Montgomery doesn't like him at all. Hodges is not fond of him. You were tackling with the right guy, so I didn't tackle him. He tackled me, so I got out of that one alive. I'm done with that. Any other questions about the war? Okay, let's go on, if we could, to the Nuremberg war crimes trials. Since we're in Czechoslovakia and the war ended, and that's where we are now, we have to do something because we need replacements bad. And we don't know it at that point in time, but we have been put on the alert as a division of Japan to help in that war. But when you're put on the alert, that cancels everything. No matter how many points you have, you're not going home. No matter what's going on, you're still in battle with the 1st Division no matter what. Well, the war was over. We're done with the shooting. Then we're about the 3rd or 4th day. We're in Grosslitz. In Grosslitz, they send trucks down to get us to take us back, and I thought they were going to take us to Bremerhaven where the ships were. We'd jump on the ship and go home, so we'd say, great, here come the trucks. Well, the trucks pull in and back up, and they're loading us up, and I said to the driver, "Got a pretty good ride till we get to Bremerhaven." He said, "We're not going to Bremerhaven." I said, "Oh yeah, that's where the ships are." He said, "No, we're going to Nuremberg." I said, "Why would we go to Nuremberg?" He said, "Don't ask me. I know where I'm supposed to take you. You're going to Nuremberg." Truck after truck after truck. Here we go. We end up in Nuremberg, Germany. We get there and we're advised right away that the reason we're there is they have a great place called the Raffenwerk Training Grounds that the Germans use for training, and we're going to train all people coming into us from all different divisions of the Army to help fill our losses, so we're ready to go to Japan. After 3 or 4 days of getting this organized, they realized that we had those 21 soldiers, 21 German criminals, I'll call them now, that they're high command, were going to come into Nuremberg, and the MPs were doing the guard duty there, and I'm sure they were doing a great job, but they were afraid that the thousands of people that we had left go home, and we'd taken weapons from them, but they thought they might have enough, as all of us might at our homes or something, that they might do something screwy like come in and try to mess up the war crimes trials and get their generals out or kill them, whatever they wanted to do, so that they should have infantry in there. So they appointed our battalion as the battalion that would pull the guard duty at the war crimes trial. So he elected Company A, Company B, and Company C, which each of them had 145 men in. So every morning I would put my company on duty with 145 men, and we would run the duty from 5 o'clock that morning till 5 o'clock the next morning, and then we were off for 2 days to go training the recruits that we got in. Well, this is when we knew what our job was going to be. We had trained for it for listening to the MPs and a couple other little things out in the training area, that how it was supposed to run and stuff. So the first morning we go into it, I thought, well, I should go up and down the line and talk to each of the prisoners and make sure they know that we know that you know that the guards that were on duty here are gone, but we're going to take over and we'll do what we can do to help you and stuff. So anyhow, I made this speech. I went to, Herman Goring was in cell number 1, so I went to Goring first, who was the most active, most recruited, and the smartest, I must admit, of all the prisoners. And I introduced myself and said, we're here to help you. We're trying to make you comfortable. We'll try to keep all the worries out of your mind and make your last days as good as they can. I was lying. We weren't going to try to make them comfortable, but we were going to do the best we can to keep from getting caught and not making them comfortable. But anyhow, I made this speech, and when I was just ready to leave Goring's door with this little 16-inch opening in it, my guard's standing there, I look over and there's a piece of paper laying on the floor. So just army, I said, and I gave him the dignity of his rank. I said, Field Marshal, you're going to have to clean up your cell. And man, he snapped his heels and said, Field Marshals don't clean cells. Perfect English. A little bit of accent. Perfect English. And I said, phew. Now I'm 19. I just turned 20. So now I'm really smart because I'm 20 years old. All you guys are 20 years old. We know everything. So anyhow, I thought, wow, how am I going to handle this? But I don't want to. So my guard started to walk away, and the guard says, he'd been in combat with me too, one of my sergeants. He said, you going to let him get away with that? And I said, they told us don't touch the prisoners. He said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'll handle it. I had no idea in the world what to do. So I start down the next door was Hess, the next door, and I go all the way down to the tent on that side, turn and come back, and I'm still making that stupid speech, how nice we're going to treat them, and the other stupid thing in my mind of what am I going to do. By the time I get up to near the end of the line, I smelled the coffee and the breakfast, and it smelled so good, and it was early in the morning, and right underneath the criminal wing where the prisoners were, there was a food services company that was down there, and they prepared the food for the prisoners and so forth. And they would bring it up in a diameter about from here to where that lady sits in a circle. That was the diameter. They would bring it up, the food up on carts and put it there. And then, of course, they weren't allowed in the prison wing. So my guys then would, my runners, prison guards would never leave the cell block or the cell, but my runners would go out and get the food, bring it in, and feed the prisoners. Well, the more I got up there, I thought this 20-year-old kid's got the answer now. So I go out into the opening where all this food was, and I said, no food in cell number 1. One of those guys said, that's Goring's cell. I said, no food in cell number 1. They said, yes, sir. So they went ahead and served the breakfast. And I went over and went to the other part of the criminal wing, the other part of the jail had cells just like that over there. We used them for us guys to sleep in or sit down and do whatever we wanted because we were on I was on 24 hours and off 48. My guards were on 2 hours and off 4. So I'm sitting over there, I'm making out morning reports and stuff, and the runner comes over and says, hey, luck you, Goring's over there raising hell because he didn't get any deed. And I said, yeah. He said, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, let him holler or something. So I waited, and I knew something more would happen because he was too smart. I knew it right from the beginning. And so about 15 minutes later, he came back over and he said, he's really storming the place up, and he's already telling the owner, speaking across to the rest of the prisoners in the cells opposite his like there, we got to take care of this. This guy's not feeding us and all this stuff. He said he's going to take it up to the courtroom. And I said, oh man. I said, are they ready to go up now? And he said, yes. So they went up to the courtroom, and I waited and waited. The shoe's going to drop sooner or later. So finally Colonel Lupination was down. He said, what the hell did you do to Goring? And I said, nothing. He said, well, he said you refused to feed him. I said, yeah. He said, you can't do that. I said, Luke and I, we've been in combat together. I said, Luke, I already did, so I guess I'm in trouble. He said, yeah, you cannot keep from feeding the prisoners. I said, okay, I don't know how to handle this. And I said, Colonel, are you going to feed him? Are you going to clean his cell? He said, well, no, I'm not going to clean his cell. I said, you think I'm supposed to? He said, well, certainly not. I said, what about my guard, that fine sergeant we won this war? You're going to send him in there to clean that cell? He said, no. I said, who the hell is going to clean the cell? There's a long silence, and Luke said, I'll take care of him, but don't give me no more trouble. So I got out of that one. He went up, and I never heard any more about that one. And Goring didn't like me for it, so now it's strike one for him when he told me what he was going to let me do, and I told him he'd have to clean the cell. And then strike two, I got even. So right now, he's real smart, and I'm not too brave, but we're on even terms. So him and I were off on the right basis. In the interest of time, I'll shorten it up. The rest of the prisoners were, some of them were very docile, some of them were in Looney Tunes, like Hess was, he was in the other, and I'd have to send him to the field hospital about every third month. He'd go off, way off, didn't know what was going on, we'd send him to the field hospital. The rest of them were okay. Then you came up the other side, and there was Julius Stryker, was the last one coming up on the left, and he was an absolute evil human being. He was crazy evil. And I said to Goring one time, after Goring and I spoke in normal circumstance, I said, how could someone as stupid as Stryker seems to be become a general? He said, all he had to do was please Hitler. If he said kill 70 more Jews, he would go out and kill 70 of anything and report back that the commission was accomplished, and he kept raising him up, and all at once he was a general. And I said, but he's really stupid. I said, he's nasty. I said, I can't understand him. Well, he was a real pain in the neck. He would run around his cell naked. He would talk about the great sex people the Germans were and how us Americans knew nothing. He was driving the guys on his cell. They were getting about half goofy with him all the time. And one of the orders we had is don't touch him. So it's, about 3 times a month or so, I'd have to go over there in the guard in his prison. When his door was shut, I'd like to go in there, and I said, don't touch the prisoner. So I'd call Stryker. I'd say, why don't you sit down and shut up in there, or you're going to bother the rest of the prisoners. He didn't like me, but I was on the outside, he was on the inside. So anyhow, this went on and on and on, and finally one time, 6 months into the trials or more, the runner come over and said, man, the guard on Stryker's shelf said he can't handle it anymore, he's going to bust him. I said, no, don't go near him, because the door was never locked, by the way. This 4-inch thick oak door was never locked going into the prison room, because we weren't supposed to touch them, and we weren't supposed to let them get any weapons or anything. Anyhow, he was having a really bad night. Stryker was just tearing it up. And the runner come over about the 3rd time. He said, you got to go over and do something. Your guard in his door is just ready to tear him up. So I went over and I told the guard, I said, take a walk. And Stryker kept doing all this stupid stuff and calling all those dirty names and things like this. And I didn't have to listen to it long, but I knew how the guard felt. And so I finally thought, So I said, come here. And I got him over close to the door, and there was 2 little bars by the door. I reached in and went like this, turned his head into the door. As soon as he hit the door, he fell like a rock, and I thought, oh my God. I got through this whole war, now I'm going to end up in a stockade. I'm done. It's all over, because you couldn't touch him. Don't touch the prisoner. And so, of course, next morning, I told the runner, I said, tell the guard to go back in the door and don't say nothing, but come over to me every 20 minutes and let me know, is he moving, is he up, is he in bed, is he dead, tell me what's going on. So about every 20 minutes for the next hour or so, he'd come over and said, yeah, he's up, he's in bed, and he's laying down, he's not mouthing off, he's being normal. And finally, after the 3rd trip over, I said, okay, that's enough. So the next morning, they go up to the courtroom. I don't have to tell you, he's got 2 beautiful shining girls. He wasn't up there 10 minutes, so here comes Colonel Lupinase. He said, why in the hell did you touch one of the prisoners? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Stryker's up there and said the commander of the guards beat him up. And I said, Luke, he beats his head on the wall and he runs around saying stupid things. He's naked in there half the time. I said, he's an idiot. And Luke looks at me and said, is that the best story you got? I said, Luke, it's the only story I got. And he said, I'll try it. I don't know if I can make it fly. I'll try it. Later in the day, he came down and said, you are sure lucky. Just going about your, many of my dumb things came to work on my stuff. My time is up for this. I'm sorry to lift you by the war crimes trials, but that would have been the most fun part of it. Anyhow, the rest of it was pretty mundane after combat. So if you have any questions, I'd like to answer them before we dismiss.
Yes, sir. What were your conversations with Albert Speer?
Albert Speer was a great
person or not, or what was the thing with Speer in your conversations with him?
He was a great speaker. He was an orator. He would talk to you all day long if you would listen. When he got done, he hadn't said anything. You know the kind of guy I mean? He was smart enough to fool Hitler, and I was dumber than dirt, but he wasn't smart enough to fool me. I'm going to stand around and waste my time listening to a big long story. When I get all done, we right back where we started from. That's Speer. Yes, sir.
How do you make boring when you get a suicide pill?
If that question wouldn't have come up, my speech would have been worthless. Every meeting I ever have, I'm asked the same question. And I can promise you there's at least 10 stories on the street, 5 of which are real possibilities. But if I had to vote on who may have got the capsule to him, I wouldn't vote because we took 3 capsules from him. One when he came in, one after he was there a little while, and a third one we don't know how he got. I don't know how he got the 4th. But there's a lot of stories, and I could tell you through the investigation of how it happened, what all they looked at, and how they, to this day, nobody's been tried for it, but I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to which one of them. There was a new one just about 2 months ago on the news, on television, where some guy said that Goring went with his guard into the cell next to him to get something out of his bag in there, and it was a jar of cream. And so sure enough, that in that jar of cream was his capsule. That's baloney, because first of all, they didn't go into the thing. We got them what they said they needed out of their stuff and took it into them, but that's not my problem. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Talk about the Jews. Many of the prisoners talk about the Jews.
Yes, they treated them fine. There was nothing wrong with that. They treated the Jews fine. They didn't know anything about these concentration camps. All of that thing was so terrible. It was just like American made-up movies. And of course, in the war crimes trials up on the top floor, when the guy would be on the docket saying that he knew nothing about that, and then when they would bring in witnesses from the lawyers that were trying to condemn this guy, then the stories would all change because they all knew about it. They weren't idiots. They just didn't want to be hung. And in the 19 months I had them in jail, Goring told me on at least 6 occasions, "You'll never hang me." And on 6 occasions, I went, "Ha ha ha ha." That's how smart I was. Any other questions? One of the things my guards liked to do is they would take a shoestring and they would hang it down and make a hangman's noose on the end of it. Well, he's standing out here looking into the cell. The prisoner slept with his head back this way, looking at that blank wall. My guard was right here at this 16-inch door, and there was a spotlight there. So at night, the spotlight shining through there, and one of the guards, my guards had it planned pretty good. One of them would always pretend he stripped and stumbled, slapped his feet against that tile wall, tile floor, which is where it make a lot of noise, and that was kind of the signal that would wake up the prisoners, and then they would all take the shoestring and go like this in front of the light, and over that wall would be a big hangman's noose. And then the prisoners would scream and holler. Well, they would holler and say, "This is indignant," this is whatever they were trying to say, and then I would go over and try to get them to calm down and tell them it's their imagination. Like I said, we lied when I told them. I lied when I told them we were going to be nice to them and treat them good stuff. Yes, sir.
Did you ever see anything that you thought looked like remorse or
No, sir. Yeah, to answer your question, yes, I did see some of it. Most of it happened, we had a Catholic priest, a Protestant minister, a Jewish rabbi, and we took one prison, not we, but we had people there take one of the walls out, two of the criminal cells up on another floor, and we made that a little chapel. And these different denominations would ask the prisoners if any wanted them to come to church. Of course, we'd send guards with them, that they would be welcome and when the church service would be and stuff. Most of them at first refused. Some of them gradually went the other way. Some of them flat out denied there was a God and that this was foolishness to start. People would try to teach them that stuff. But then that's got to be the greatest start and the greatest finish I've ever had to giving a talk. I think that last question, some of those people relented and went to church. Some of them at the very end when they asked if they wanted to come to a meeting with their souls and God before they were to be hung. Almost all but a couple said yes to that. So yes, some of them relented and some did. Julius Stryker going up the steps of Deutschland über alles. We were glad they hung the rope on him. Thank you all so much for your time.
I'm sorry? Do you mind taking my picture with me?
This button?
Yeah, it's that one, but you gotta kind of click on it to get it to focus.